Be jealous if you like. Well, I have to say, got it, All right, okay. You can all be jealous because I'm sitting here in Tucson and it's about 60, 68 and sunny. That said, I did due diligence. I spent 5 years in South Dakota and just moved here. So cold is cold, and South Dakota qualifies, trust me. Now, that said, I'm not sure which I prefer, deep cold or sweltering, so hot that you don't want to go outside because your eyes just boil when it's 114 and there's no moisture in the air. You just go out and feel like you're in a microwave. So they're all options. Well, thanks for inviting me, Ceci. This is something that I'm going to talk about. This. Oh, there she's got me moving forward. Fair enough. I'm really I've retired twice, and I keep coming out of retirement to do this particular kind of activity. I retired once from the University of Kansas, second time from the University of South Dakota, and now I may retire from the University of Arizona. Who knows? But I've gotten to work on, create and develop and sort of iteratively design a project that we call Transition Ahead Roundtable here in Tucson. It got its birth as a transition clinic in South Dakota. We started out in the medical school there when our first area of interest was healthcare transition from pediatric to adult healthcare for kids with disabilities. And you probably all know well that that's a huge national problem and has been for decades. So we got the funding to begin this whole notion of helping kids with disabilities of all kinds, including very profound disabilities, transition from pediatric to adult healthcare. And then we couldn't stop there because this transition is a whole life process, and it has more to do with just healthcare. It's got to do with everything in a kid's life, and in fact, a family's life. Families themselves are consumed with this transition process. And nobody knows that better than raising special kids, and organizations just like that. Parent-to-parent connection in South Dakota is another one very similar to to raising special kids that we worked with in South Dakota. And maybe she gave me this opportunity because I always begin when I tell parents on our Transition Ahead Roundtable activities, when we get to the afternoon session with raising special kids, I literally say, if I had one group to know as a parent or someone engaged personally with a kid with disabilities, I would want to go and know the people at Raising Special Kids. I think they're the best resource for families around. And I'm not coming off of that statement. So that's probably how I got the invitation for today, is I say that over and over and over again. We've been working together, Ceci and a couple of other people on her staff, for the last almost 3 years now. Ceci, it doesn't seem that long, but it is. Let me tell you a little bit about this, and I'm really open to questions and interruptions. But I've got sort of 3 or 4 things I want to share with you. This is a flyer that we distribute to agencies, and when we get in a school district, we share this flyer with people. It's sort of an overview of what the Transition Ahead Roundtable is all about. It really is for kids 14 to 21, and we've actually in the last year we've really added. It was 17 to 21, 17 to 21, but we've gone down to the middle school group, and we're really trying to focus on this past year bringing kids in who are an earlier age than 17. or 17 to 21. But this is a day-long activity for these kids and their families, and we bring them in, and with our team for an all-day activity. We meet with one family and one kid. Often the family is just the mother. We'll take any and all members of the family that want to participate, but typically it's the mom. Often, lately, in the last year or so, we've also had grandmothers. A lot of grandmothers are taking over responsibility for their kids, for their grandkids in this process. So we spend a day together and we do a lot of things. And really we call it, and I say this to the young kids at 9 o'clock, we start at 9 and we finish at 3. We have a couple of breaks, including a half hour for lunch, but it's a busy, busy day. And I'll show you a little bit about, in a few minutes, I'll show you a little bit about the schedule, just so you get a sense of how concentrated this event is. We bring the family together, and we've had to, because of COVID, we had to take what was a face-to-face activity that actually happened in the med school and in the med school library and the med school offices. And we had space in the medical school to do this. And again, we've never completely exclusively focused on healthcare transition, but that's where the subjects or the process started. It was a face-to-face activity. People would come from all around South Dakota. They'd come from Minnesota, because Sioux Falls isn't that far from Minnesota. They'd come from Iowa if they didn't have to, people would literally come across states to do this once they heard about it. Our initial referral source in South Dakota were pediatricians, especially those pediatricians or geneticists, genetic counselors, people who were involved with kids with disabilities in some healthcare way. Once the word got out to other families would refer families, teachers began to learn about it, and more recently here in here in Tucson, we have a lot more involvement of schools a couple of school districts that are our referral source, and that's really, from my perspective, going to stabilize this process. Across, on a much more regular basis. And we'll talk about how you stabilize, or what the problems of creating a stable referral source is as we move on. But this whole day, we call it a roundtable, and that's the first thing I say to the kid in the morning. We get on Zoom meetings. We had to move to Zoom, so most of our activity is remote now. We do some face-to-face work, especially if we've got young people in Tucson public schools, or on a couple of reservations that are nearby. And when I say nearby, I'm talking an hour and a half away. And then we get staff down there to participate on the ground with these young folks. As it stands, families have to have the technology and to tap in on a Zoom. So this is a Zoom meeting all day long. And we do so we do all these conversations are face-to-face on Zoom. So that really doesn't count. And it's really been a learning experience for me, because I'm a retired professor type, and I'm used to seeing and wanting to spend time face-to-face with people. But I've adapted. I've adapted, as we all have. The kids, we talk about it as a roundtable, because it really is, we want to instill in them a genuine sense that they are active and equal participants in the day. The day is about them, and we want to hear from them. The image, the graphic I used on that particular flyer there you go, is one that really represents that image of a kid at the table, not being talked at or sitting behind, sort of metaphorically behind mom or dad or the parent or the adults in the room, but we want them to be an equal, and we expect that, and we encourage that, and we nurture that experience throughout the day. Lots of the activities are individualized in the sense that sometimes you'll see on this schedule, the youth is in interactions with one of our team. And these are I'll go through briefly some of the activities we go through. Sometimes the parent, we're just working with the parent alone, because one of the evolutions of this process is that we really initially began to our focus was always on the kid. And then the more we involve parents in the day, because they had to be involved, they were bringing their kids and spending the whole day with us, we realized how much we had to work on them. And so that's where parent-to-parent connection in South Dakota, and that's where Raising Special Kids comes in, is that many of these parents are so isolated and so disconnected from the resources available and so grateful for any of this information that we give them, that it was just a huge learning experience. But probably the most powerful learning experience for the parent during the day was seeing their kid in a way, sort of from the outside, watching their kid participate with us, seeing what they did, how they articulated themselves or not, things they were confident about or not. They got to observe, as a participant observer, their kid interact with a team of us all day long. Now, sometimes, again, the parent was in a meeting or in a session exclusively on their own, and that's the family schedules in gray. The pink sessions are where everybody's involved, the whole team, or most of the team anyway. So we divide up, we do parent interview, we do a kid interview, independent of one another, because you want to see if they're telling the same story. We want to see if they have the same sense of what their future holds or doesn't hold. And not that we're trying to check each other and say, well, you're wrong. Nobody's wrong. It's just how consistent and how concerted is, that's the word I was looking for. How concerted is the effort that's being made here? So we introduce families to a lot of resources that exist around the state. So they have face-to-face meeting or Zoom face-to-face meetings with vocational rehabilitation and DDD network, with the benefits specialists for the state. We do our own interview with them. As a parent, we do a similar interview with the kid. The kid gets to meet at least one other person, young adult with disability. Then they interact as a sort of a peer mentoring discussion. We talk about, our focus is on healthcare transition, on thinking about what are your strengths? Can you express yourself in terms of your strengths and your interests? Do you have any, and many of them do not, or they have so many they can't figure out which is the most interesting or most important to them, interest in a career. Now, when they're 14 or 15, they're going to say, I don't know, and that's fine. But they have interests that we can lead them to think about and to pursue in a sort of a much more purposeful way at a very introductory level. We have that healthcare conversation. We introduce them to independent living resources. The parent meets with often it's Ceci and me and a peer mentor in the afternoon by themselves. And then an important feature, because we are interested in their thinking about some kind of career path or employment. That's really a big thing. If you knew my spouse and the director of the Sonoran Institute for Disabilities here at the University of Arizona, Wendy Parent-Johnson, she's just one of the premier speakers and focal points on supported employment, and has been for decades. So helping kids and families think about employment isn't so much an option as much as that's really a great goal to have early in your life and to pursue it in a supported way. What can you do to support that? So in a way, this is like a huge supported transition process. We work with the family individually, we work with the kid individually. We have some of the pink conversations are in together, particularly the healthcare. Things when they see their kid, like in the healthcare conversation, what we're interested in, and we sort of have to sometimes, put a sack over the parent's head because they want to do all the talking. They've done all the talking for 16 years or 18 years or at least 15. And so they want to continue that. So we have to say, look, this interview, this conversation is with the kid. We want to find out what they know and what they do. And that's true of all the activities we have. What does the kid know? What does the kid do? What kind of opportunities do they have? If our agenda with you guys today is to help explore this notion of becoming more independent, what chances do they have? Does the environment they live in, or operate in, whether it's school or home, do those offer real legitimate opportunities to grow in your independence? And often, and we learned this a long time, several years ago in South Dakota, parents can be a hurdle for the kid. They have been so, and Ceci says it's on letting go. And the stories that parents can tell each other, that Raising Special Kids tells these and shares with their story with these parents, is just often, I'm not just once in a while, often is profoundly insightful and helpful to families. So that's really a great thing to have. So the parent gets to observe the kid in this healthcare. Okay, do you talk to your doctor, or does your parent do all the talking? What happens when you go to the doctor's office? Do you know about your meds? Do you take meds? Does your mom put them in next to your orange juice glass every morning, or do you have your own med box? Things. We're not interested in say yes or no answers. We want to know what that kid is really doing in their day and what chances do they have to get better at it. And so often parents will sit there and listen to these kinds of activities, listen to the kid talk about what came out of their career interest inventory, and say, I didn't know that they knew how to do that, or now I can see that they're ready to take the next step. Whatever that context is, whether it's healthcare or interest or relationships or learning how to drive or live on their own. So it sort of snowballs through the day. It's really fascinating and profoundly gratifying, I have to say, which is why I'm still doing it. At the end of situational assessments, that comes from the supported employment world. We're interested in down here, you see 1 to 2 o'clock, we have a transition specialist who will put kids in different work situations or tasks. I won't say work like employment. We used to put them in work situations in South Dakota, but just for a few, 30 minutes, this can go on for 15, 2 sessions or 3 sessions, 3 different activities where we observe, the transition specialist observes how do they function under these conditions. It isn't can they do the job or not. That's the wrong question. And many voc rehab counselors always, they can't do that job. Well, that's not the question for a situational assessment. The assessment is under what conditions do they function well? And under what conditions or situations do they not function well? Can they follow instructions? Do they ask questions? How many prompts do they need? Are they easily distracted? So we had our specialist observes the kids in these different scenarios and then comments at the end of the day on what the strengths that kid exhibited. So we'll talk about that. We also spend some time with them late in the afternoon. Probably one of my favorite colleagues of all time, Emily Meyer, has been doing a lot of these conversations with the kid. And the kid presents literally, probably 90% of the time, it's the first time a kid has ever talked up and led a meeting. We ask the kid at the end of the day to do a debriefing. We call it a debriefing. We just say, you're going to present some of your thoughts that you've come up with today. And we have a template that we have them fill in, and they dictate to us what goes in this template. So so at the end of the day, thanks. You're ahead of the game here. Not ahead of the game, you're right on. So at the end of the day, we come back together, all of us, parents included, and teachers lately. So exciting to have teachers, the SPED teachers in the classroom that have referred these kids are staying on from 2:30 to 3 just to observe this particular event, this half-hour conversation. The kid will say, okay, and so we turn the session, the Zoom meeting, over to the kid. And they're on a little image just like you guys are right now. And the kid says, well, okay, my strengths are these. We've had them articulate their strengths, their interests, their goals. And then just as important of all those things, what would you ask your team here, or any team, your teachers at school or your parents, what kind of support? And we have to say, what do we mean by supports here? What do you want your team to be able to offer you? What do you need help from? So that's the time when they can just say, okay, I'm going to ask for, and you can see this one. This is just one of, three or 4 years worth. This is actually a new feature that we added about 2 years ago, having this planner that the kid presents. Usually we just ask them, how'd the day go? But it's been a huge qualitative shift in the outcome of the kid, because they're so excited. When you saw them at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're reticent to speak about anything. By 2:30 in the afternoon, they're excited to have this meeting. Now, I won't say that every time, but I would say that about 90%, 85 to 90% of the time. This is a really strong event for the team. We get to see how this kid has unfolded. And we also listen to watch, just like I'm watching you guys now, watch what is the reaction of the parent to this. I mean, sometimes it is literally jaw-dropping to watch them go, what? And they're cheering, and they're, all this body language. At the beginning of the day, kid is often, you'd be amazed how the kid will watch their mom on the screen. Okay. The question comes to the group, or it comes to the kid, and the kid's looking, okay, it'd be like me looking at Ceci for the right answer. Okay, what do I say next, Ceci? That's what the kid, by the end of the day, they've been on their own a lot. We've engaged them and given them a comfortable space to use their own voice in. And it's transformational sometimes. The real challenge, and I'm sure you guys have already anticipated this, the real challenge is what happens the next day, and what happens the following day, and the following day, and what happens at school, and what happens at home. So we give kids, we write up. So this is their final presentation. It takes sometimes, depending on how fast a reader they are, it takes 4 minutes for them to say it, or sometimes it takes 6 or 7. One of the important things for us is, and for teachers and parents alike, is to give their kids enough space to respond. And sometimes it's cognitive lag, and sometimes it's just lag of experience of having a voice. So there'll be pauses in the day, and where then you prompt or cue, but that's okay. Parents can learn how to do that too. And teachers, I always hated those blank spaces. I already started, I'd ask a question and there'd be no answer. And I'd say, it's not a rhetorical question I'm asking here. I need a response. Nobody would respond, so I'd start talking, Anyway, parents often do that too. They don't give their kids space to process and articulate their thoughts. And that's part of what their experience in this day is about. We send, usually it takes us 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, depending on our schedule. This team only comes together once every 2 weeks. It's a pretty intensive experience, as you can see. We produce a document that we send to the parent. In total, it's probably 18 pages long, including a list of all the people they've met, all the organizations that they've met, the contact information for everybody and us, as well as our own experiences. But we also send a bunch of tools, or what we call tools. That's I sent you that one late in the afternoon. That's it. There you go. This is what we call our healthcare transition template. So this we send tool. We have another one it's on Situate. We have another one just similar to this called Situational Assessments. What did we learn from your working with you in the situational assessments? I'm not going to share that one with you because I needed to ask permission of my colleague to let that one go. This one, it's mine to share or not share. You know? So after the healthcare conversation, this is a 40-minute conversation we have with the parent and the kid about the kid's healthcare. What do they know? What can they do? What can they learn? We give them this is a template. We fill in different activities that we think, as a result of our experience, our observations of listening and talking and working with your kid, with you. If your name's Richard, we'd say, hi, Richard. Together we look carefully at your strengths, opportunities, and connections to help you manage your own healthcare and transition to an adult doctor. Here's what we think we learn. Our general team observations are, and then some tasks we think we introduce them to them some tools. This thing called Doc Talk, that little card there, talking with your doctor, something we created about 8 years ago. That's really very, very useful for the kid. Practice using that, learning how to walk into the front desk and say, I'm here and my name is this, and go do the first part of your appointment by yourself. So we coach them and we see how well, what do they know about that first session? Then we talk about medications and keeping health information. So we give them this template and we individualize this to every kid that we meet. We do the same thing for situational assessments. There's an individualized template of, okay, Richard, we observed your strengths in these different work settings. And here's what we saw. What are your strengths and where could you use help? So we give them that. We also give them a copy of their own action plan, the one that was just up there a few minutes ago, the things that they identify as their strengths and as their goals and things that they want to ask for support. They get a copy of that. And then one that I couldn't get, I was going to send it to Ceci, and I had other people send me theirs, and I kept getting these little miniaturized icons. We also do a vision board with them. It's a vision board. It's just colorful. It identifies. It has some images that represent some of the ideas that they've talked about today. Do you want to live? Do you want to have a family? There'll be a little. Okay, if they come up, I want to have a family. I want to go to school. I want to learn how to drive. Then we have a vision board that we also print out and give to them in color because they've helped us create it. We have one of our team members is pretty good at creating those on the fly. So those things, the kid walks away, or not walks away, but we deliver that 2 to 4 weeks later to the family. We also write up probably close to a 14-page document that to the parent that outlines what our observations and recommendations are. We try and talk to them in a very personalized way about what we observed. And a lot of it, when I started writing these up, I felt like I was on eggshells all the time, telling a parent how to parent. It's like, okay, you're on thin ice here, Johnson. So But at the same time, many of these parents or grandparents are so eager for some support, for some direction, for a plan of their own, and some strategies that they can employ. So they not only see what the kid got in their packet, but we give them specific comments about, look, Richard is really dependent on you for some of these issues here, and you can see this, this, and this, and it's important for him or her to learn to believe in themselves, to believe in their own, and this is the fancy academic word, their own efficacy, their self-efficacy. I believe that I have the capacity. I am a capable kid. I'm capable, maybe not of everything, but I have capabilities. So we talk about that. Whew. Well, see, I just skimmed the surface. Well, not really. Those are the big brush strokes. And it's really an exciting, intensive day for everybody, honestly. It has its issues, it has its problems. Technology has been one of them. Frankly, it's, from my perspective, this is a much better school-based activity if you can get the buy-in. And that's most recently, in the last 6 months, we've got 3 different schools with SPED teachers, kids, the teachers of these kids, who sit in that last half-hour session. And I shouldn't say the last 6 months, the last 6 or 7, 5 out of the last 6 or 7 sessions, we've had teachers online with us at the end of the day, and encourage the family and the kid to share these documents with them. But the teachers are sitting there going, whoa, this is a platform, this is content I can use in the IEP. This is content I can use that I can build on, especially, this is the more exciting part about the middle school kids. If we can get a 15-year-old before he moves on to high school, then we can help them pass that information on teacher to teacher, from school to school, because that in itself is another transition. So the teachers are really going to be one of the powerful links in sustaining these efforts. You can only do so much in one day. You can only create a few, even when you create aha moments for kid and parent. How is that sustainable? I mean, we've all had a million aha moments. How do you sustain those things? That's the challenge. And if we can get the content to move with the kid, get the teachers to build on that, see how, and honestly, they're ecstatic. I mean, and I knew they would be. I mean, I've worked with high school teachers, special ed teachers for years in school-based activities and transition courses, build a transition course. If you've got that kind of follow through and consistency over time, the chance of you being successful in helping that kid become more independent goes way up. The last
Richard, I think we're at time. I'm
okay,
sorry.
sorry.
Did you want to add one last? Add one last?
No, I'm sorry. You said 20
No,
minutes.
that's okay.
And I got started late, so I apologize. So I'll quit. But if there's any questions or if you have to move on to other agendas, I'm good. Ceci knows how to get a hold of me if you want.
I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I will be sharing all the materials. Oh, Alyssa has a question.
Alyssa and Angela. So I would say if you guys have questions and want to stay on, we'll keep it on. If you got to go, understandable.
Okay.
Yeah, I also have questions. So I'm like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me too.
It's just such a fabulous program. And of course, I'm wondering if you offer it out of state or how you could possibly be a model and how we as parent centers could help start some kind of a model? Where would we start? Because I'm assuming it's not offered out of state.
No, and it's hard enough to offer across the state remotely.
Right,
And
right.
the fact that we've learned how to do it remotely has been a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Yeah.
Because it brings in all these other logistical problems. It becomes a question of logistics when you're doing it remotely. You know, we've talked about this, in fact, when we were in South Dakota, Kansas, and Missouri, where we just come from, both wanted to do this. We would, you know, you'd need to talk to the director. You need to talk to Wendy Parent Johnson. And she's on that flyer. Her contact information is on that flyer. She's the director of the Institute, Sonoran Institute for Disability here at the U of A. We're interested in that. A lot of it is in the research world that I came from, it's fidelity of implementation. Can you build other teams that can do this with the fidelity that you think they need to do with the, you know, you understand, are they true to the model? Are they true to the process? It's, you know, you can write all the manuals you want, but you need to train people. So we're certainly open. The question is, how does it get paid for? That's always a deal. We're all on, you know, even though universities, yeah, we're all on soft money. So
I'm looking on your website. It looks like you guys are also funded by the DD Council, right? So is
this,
that
yes, yeah, this project is funded. This particular project especially is the premier project that they're funding through at the Sonoran Institute. Is this, yeah, they are the funder for this here in Arizona.
So that's one avenue to look into. If it's already happening, how do we model it in other places? This is what they're doing, and it's working.
Right.
So my question was just related to the parents.
Yeah.
So I know that we do a transition institute here regionally in Idaho every year, and it is, we as the parent center, we do a training we do a breakfast with the parents, and we do an evening with the parents, and then we do breakout sessions. We get some time directly with our students, with the youth. We typically do not have them come together at any point because like you mentioned, you know, in the beginning of your day, you're looking at kids who really are looking to their parents for answers and maybe aren't as open. I know that by the end of the day, maybe they've forgotten that their parents are so close. But I guess my question is, how are you able to really get those really good engagement with the youth, knowing that their parents are there? Or is there time where their parents just aren't there and they're able to be confidential about everything that they're expressing?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that, at the schedule for the day, the parent is not there about half the time. So we do one-on-one kind of interview with them about, okay, do you have friends? So that's a conversation we have independent with them. Who are your friends? Or any close friends? Do you have, you know, so a lot of the conversations that were in that one color-coded side are just with the kid. The pink ones, the hot pink ones, where the family is all together. But many of the sessions, I would say more than half of them, are independent. The kid is on his own track, and the parent is concurrently on their own track. And then they come together intermittently.
And then are there some things that they know that they can share without it being captured? Or, I mean, I'm not talking overly confidential stuff, but there are ideas and dreams and wishes and things that kids might want to express that they would feel like their parents would shut down. I'm a parent of 3 young adult kids. I know how they feel. So, you know, they would not want to express some things to me or in front of me or have that shared later. So is there that opportunity?
Right. Well, yeah, we always say to them, anything you share with us is confidential. If you want to reshare the results of your conversation at the end of the day about any of this, that's up to you. We don't say, in fact, in our report, we don't say, well, Richard says he's got a girlfriend and you don't know about it. You know, we don't say those things. We keep that. It's more broad brushstroke than that. I mean, And there are relatively few intimate details pulled out, really. And we're not digging that deep. For one, there's not that much time, but we're trying to ascertain and assess. Well, the kid says, oh yeah, I have this friend, this friend, this friend, and this friend. Well, do you do anything outside of school with them? You know, if they start saying, well, no, and we see that they're, and many of them are, pretty lonely, then we will say in our report, you know, we won't say your kid's lonely, but we'll say your kid would really benefit by expanding social contacts outside of school or joining clubs where they're going to feel like they are outside, you know. So we'll find a way to say how we've interpreted the information we get from the kid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And I have one question. So I know, I guess I'm trying to figure out what can be done about this. So I know that in the beginning, you said that the family has to have internet connection and devices. So I'm just thinking about the underserved community who may not have access to those materials. So how are you going to learn to accommodate those families, especially if you're partnering with the schools? Can those sessions happen in schools, or, you know, because we want to make sure those families are also getting served, even if they don't have the supplies to do that type of training?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and that's really the value I sort of mentioned in passing almost. The value added of a school-based model is that, and frankly, skilled kids will act some ways, they won't revert to mother-kid dynamics if they're at school. But if they're one sitting in the room and then the other one's in the living room on their iPad or their cell phone, which will make you believe, if you guys have had these sessions where people are using their phones, by the end of that hour, you're seasick because all these things are moving around. So the school-based really helps because the kid is now at school and not at home, so they're not going to revert to some home style behavior. The parent isn't in charge. So school-based is much better. Now the parent can be at home, and they're not typically at school. In fact, that's never happened. They're at home. The kid is now at school. Those things are by far the best because the technology exists, the bandwidth exists, the clock exists, you know, the schedule is maintained. Now, when we have to go totally remote and it's not in the school, like on some of the sessions early on or at the res, different reservations, that's pretty problematic. The challenge is getting, you know, we're still trying to get the kids to school, which means you're waiting, and schools then close before, you know, and the day is 2:30 typically out here. So this goes till 3. Can you cut the session? No, we can't cut the session. So it's the best we can do right now is to do it. You need the school-based, but we are certainly aware, like we've just begun conversations with the foster care system. How can we work with kids who are in foster care? Now, hopefully they're still in school. So, but yeah, Alyssa's taken off. That's good. All right. Yeah. Anyway, that's the best I can share with you at the moment, Cheryl.
Okay. Thank you.
Richard, thank you so much. I think this is such a great model. Thank you for sharing. We'll pass along all of the materials, but thank you all for coming. We'll see you all in January 2023.
Yes, thank you, Richard. That was a great presentation.
I'm sorry I ran over.